What the heck is it? Most of you already figured it out. The other day on the blog I posted a picture of this little jig that I threw together real quick, and again, this is just a really rough proof of concept type of tool. There's nothing elegant about the way I put this together. I just made it as quick as I could just to make sure it would do what I wanted. And I asked if anybody could recognize what this was, and of course it was pretty obvious and almost everybody got it right. It is a blade alignment tool. Now this is one of those tools that most people would look at and say there's no need for that. Aligning blades on a scroll saw is not that hard. You don't need an electronic doodad to make that happen. But let me explain to you why I built this. One of the most rewarding things I've been able to do with the blog over the last couple of years is to spend some time helping people that have some physical disabilities to be able to enjoy the craft, or any craft for that matter. And that's kind of what this jig is all about. I'm going to zoom in here real close, show you how it works, which is going to be pretty obvious, and then tell you who it's for. Anyone who's ever used a scroll saw, especially if they're scrolling thicker wood, knows how important it is to have the blade 90 degrees to the table. If you don't, your cuts come out at an angle and the pieces of waste wood don't remove very easy, and it can just ruin a project. So most of us use a square, and we loosen the table if the table tilts, or the head if the head tilts, and we move it until we get it lined up with the edge of the square. Or some people will take a protractor and put it behind the blade and watch that the blade lines up with the 90-degree mark. There's different methods for doing it, but it has to be done. Now here's the problem. Some people who are visually impaired have a really tough time seeing the edge of this compared to this very tiny blade. And it's difficult for them to set this blade back to 90 degrees. And that's what this project is all about. Is I was trying to think through the problem and come up with a solution for people who do have trouble lining their blades back up, because it is an important part of the procedure that we use. And I thought to myself, well, obviously if we had a light that came on or something, that might make it easier. And that's what this little jig is. And again, I'll be flushing it out and making it look better, before I release any plans for it. And quite simply what it is you've got these two bolts that are connected to an LED through a little battery. Now, eventually I'm going to use a 9-volt battery. Right now I'm just using a little cell one of those little batteries like go in hearing aids or something like that. And so what you have to do is you set the jig on the table and you calibrate it using your straight edge before you ever start using it. Once you get it calibrated by adjusting the upper or lower bolt in or out to make sure that these two bolts are 90 degrees from the table, then you can use the jig. And that's just as simple as taking a metal gauge, placing it up here until your LED comes on, then you know that both of those bolts are even. Now, because most bolts do come with an embossed lettering on it, I had to take these over to the disc sander and sand them flat. But now they're flat, they're adjusted in and out until they're 90 degrees to the table. And when we loosen the table and tilt it, I'll tilt it to the head to the left. Now when you put this up here and you apply just slight pressure, not enough to bend the blade, but just enough to keep the tool up against the blade. When you move the head back up, as soon as that light comes on, you're square. And that's when you can tighten the bolt back down and you're good to go. So a very simple concept, but some that could be pretty important to some people. A little different angle here to take a look at it. I've got my machinist square up against the blade, and you can see by the gap here at the top on this black line that I have the head of this Seiko scroll saw tilted to the left, I don't know, 2 or 3 degrees, something like that. Again, you take the jig, you place either the top or the bottom screw against the blade, whichever happens to be the distance you need to move it, and then with just very slight pressure with your finger, you bring the blade back until the light comes on. As soon as the light's on, you can tighten it down and you'll be at 90 degrees to the table. So if you have trouble, even if you don't have a physical disability such as poor sight, or maybe you just struggle with getting the blade back
to square, this might be a nice little tool for you to try out.
Now, the reason I brought this product onto this video to show everybody is because I actually have a request, and that is, you know, there's a lot of different disabilities that make what we do difficult, such as poor vision. I have a couple of people that are in wheelchairs and they need different types of access to the scroll saw. I have several people, or not several, I have a few people that are trying to do some productive work on the scroll saw and they maybe only have one arm. So that's a problem that I'm working on right now that's a really tough one. And having ideas from many people as opposed to ideas from one person can really be helpful. So if you're a person out there who's dealing with a disability, whether it be a very minor disability or a more substantial disability, if you have ideas on how you make this hobby easier, or if you have an idea that you think might make it easier for other people, let me know, because I'm going to be sharing these things on the blog from time to time. It's something I've been working on for a couple of years as far as helping different people get started in the hobby, and I think it's a real valuable part of what I can do here on the blog is to just make the hobby easier and more open to everybody who wants to use it. So if you have any ideas, pass them my way, and I appreciate you taking a look at this with me, and we'll catch you next time here at the Scroll Saw Workshop.